Okay, ladies, this screencast is going to begin with the election of 1824. You will never need to know the year of the election specifically, but it's just what I use to describe the election itself as a title. So recall that the Federalist Party had kind of completely broke apart, and now you just kind of have only the only the Democratic Republican Party, and they're starting to break into our second kind of series of factions, but that hasn't happened officially yet. So in the election of 1824, we actually have 5 different candidates running as Democratic Republicans for president. You're not going to need to know about all of them. I'm going to specify which ones you need to know, so don't stress about writing all of their names down that you see on the screen, but you can just see them if you want to. I do want you to know about John Quincy Adams. Recall that he was the great negotiator as James Monroe's Secretary of State, so that kind of made him very popular because he had great success in diplomatic affairs. Henry Clay was our great compromiser. He ran on a domestic affairs policy called the American System. The American System was Clay's economic plan that included large-scale support for the National Bank. He also supported the idea of protective tariffs. Remember, a tariff is an import tax that protects the local producer. And he also promoted government-funded internal improvements like roads and canals and just the government funding a lot of infrastructure. He was very supported in some of the western territories because they're very much in need of government-funded infrastructure improvements, but he is not very well liked in the South because the South doesn't want to be taxed for that purpose, and they also do not like tariffs. Now, Andrew Jackson was well known because he was the war hero from the War of 1812, specifically the Battle of New Orleans. He was a Southerner who appealed to the common man. Now, he had the highest number of popular and electoral votes, but no candidate had gotten the absolute majority needed. You need like a certain number to get the clear majority of electoral votes. So the decision went to the House of Representatives. Now, it was between Andrew Jackson and Andrew Jackson and John Quincy Adams, because they were in the top 2. And John Quincy Adams is going to actually win, but what we find out is that Henry Clay used his influence to convince Congress to vote for John Quincy over Andrew Jackson. This is because even though Henry Clay would have wanted to win himself, John Quincy did support his American system, whereas Andrew Jackson did not. So Henry Clay would have rather see John Quincy Adams as president than Andrew Jackson. But what's going to happen is as soon as John Quincy Adams is elected, he appoints Henry Clay as his Secretary of State. So it kind of looks like he's almost rewarding him for the help in getting himself elected. And so this is going to outrage Jackson, and many of Jackson's supporters are going to accuse Clay and JQA, John Quincy Adams, of having a corrupt bargain. So the corrupt bargain refers to that kind of like underlying trade-off of power between John Quincy and Henry Clay, where Henry Clay gets John Quincy elected, but then Adams makes Clay his Secretary of State. Now, John Quincy Adams, as you're going to see, is not going to become a very popular president, kind of just like his father, unfortunately. He does support the American system, and the South is not going to be happy because of tariffs, okay? The South doesn't feel like they need tariffs, protective tariffs. their cotton is already the cheapest in the world. It doesn't need to be protected. And tariffs would just make some of the goods that they need to purchase internationally more expensive. But more importantly, they're going to be upsetting other countries that have to pay that higher tax. They're going to be upsetting them. And that's a kind of a barrier to free trade. So John Quincy Adams is going to live up to Henry Clay's system, and he's going to pass the Tariff of 1828, which the South is going to nickname the Tariff of Abominations. And we're going to leave off with John Quincy Adams' presidency because we're going to talk about the next president in class on Monday. Okay, so pause the notes here and write down any questions you have.